this book, Beyond Transparency. And there's a lot to say about that title in what we do at Code for America. And Andy said, almost called us an intermediary of sorts between government, its data, and this broader community. And really, open data starts to count when you start going beyond checking the transparency box. And I think that's something that you guys are starting to get a hang of. But I want to tell you about the immense amount of energy that we're seeing all across the country and now all across the world that is basically being driven by this raw material of open data. And the second notion about this book is that it was written for a community of open data practitioners by a community of open data practitioners. So in my mind, this is just the first version. The second thing that I'll mention, so here's the book itself, you see it again, is that, so our mission is to build a government for the people, by the people, that works in the 21st century. And so when we say works in the 21st century, we really think about that from a technology perspective. And when we start thinking about technology, this is often a slide I show of what our fellows, which I'll tell you about a bit more about in a minute. This is the computer they used to get the assessor's data off of while they were working on Blight in New Orleans. This is a 30-year-old green screen computer. And often I'll show it at some of our presentations to give people a sense, you guys obviously know, that government can be a little bit behind when it comes to technology. A little bit. But what's funny, I think we learned this year, is that it really has a lot less to do with the hardware. The first thing we kind of end up making the argument of when we go into these cities is that the IT department is there to do more than change out the phones or upgrade your version of Microsoft Office. And I think that this summer we learned a lot more about it, not only with healthcare.gov, which was this huge firework example. I mean, we did not know that the whole country would be talking about government technology for this summer. But really, I think the crux of it was actually in this op-ed in the New York Times a few weeks ago that I was reading. And what it says, I just wanted to read this one quote from it, and it's talking about this $63 million unemployment benefits system that they were using in Florida. And it was just, you know, poking governments in the eye all across the country for having failed systems and failed interfaces. And he says, as a result, the old stereotype of applicants standing in long lines to speak to surly civil servants at government unemployment offices is quickly being replaced. Now those seeking work or government assistance are often spending countless hours in front of buggy websites, then getting a busy signal when they try to get through by phone. And I think that, you know, this is for in the unemployment services space. But I think it is a future that is very real, very present, if we continue down the path that we're currently on. And I think what we see at Code for America, and where it's a little bit different from, you know, this, is the notion that you need to build things for people. And that's where we kind of, one story I want to tell you that's in contrast to this, that's a bit of an alternative future from this, is the work that we were doing in the city of San Francisco this past year. And we were basically charged with increasing enrollment in their programs, full stop. And so just to give you a little bit more background, I'll delve into this a little bit more in a minute. Our fellows are 3 or 4, in this case it was 4, technologists. These are developers, designers, data scientists, project managers, or urban planners. And they embed in the city for a year to work with their government under a pretty broad, as I said, pretty broad charge. And so San Francisco HSA, I'm not sure how many of you guys are familiar with, is a beast of an organization. It's big and it's complex, and there's a huge amount of bureaucracy. It's 100 years old. I think there's 2,000 employees, and so they're saying, fix it. And what the fellows do in the first month that they're embedded in their city is they actually talk to everybody under the sun, and just to get a sense for what is the problem that they can solve. And this is where listening becomes so important, and the understanding of the people who work up against these systems every day, as well as the clients who are the beneficiaries of these systems every day, are feeling what they are experiencing. And in this case, after about 100 interviews and countless meetings, they started to get this composite image of a woman they started calling Amelia. And Amelia is, from this composite, is someone that comes home from a long day of work, has no child care, but she needs to go get groceries so she can feed her kids. So she puts the kids and herself on public transit to get to the closest grocery store, which might not be that close. And they go to the grocery store, they collect their groceries, they wait in line, they go up to the register to pay, and she swipes her EBT card, and the cashier simply just shakes his head. Swipe it again. Doesn't work. And at this moment, she kind of looks at the cashier, who really can't be any help to her. She looks at the people behind her in the line, and she goes home with no food, back on public transit, back to a home that has no food in it. And they said, what if we just worked backwards from that problem? It is so this is the issue of churn, right? And it happens to they guess about 1,000 people a month. So the 1,000 Amelias a month in San Francisco are suffering from churn gain, kicked off their benefits just to get right back on. And so they said, this is such a compelling example and use case that I think if we just work backwards from here, we can make something happen. And what they did was essentially this, is Amelia gets a notice of action in the mail, sometimes a few weeks to a month, a few weeks in advance of getting kicked off benefits. And so as you can see, it's your standard impenetrable government document. You can't see it over here, but with lots of caps letters, and if you're used to texting now, caps means you're like yelling at someone. And frankly, the chance that this actually went to the address that it was meant to, or that she saw it, is close to zero. And so instead of what we did was we started sending text messages. So instead of getting a impenetrable government document, you could sign up to get a text message that you're about to lose your benefits. In this case, your CalFresh benefits may stop at the end of the month. Questions? Call this number. And see, the magic of this is you're communicating, you're meeting people where you are, for one. But also, is that, do you think that, obviously the 1,000 people hate getting kicked off benefits every month, but can you imagine the amount of time it takes to re-enroll them every month? So in a lot of ways, this represents a rehumanizing of the experience of being on benefits. And so again, this is a conference about open data. Why am I telling you a story about CalFresh? Is because they had to spend 9 months not only to get HSA to be the first HSA in the country to be willing to text their clients, from what we know, but also they had to spend 9 months getting the administrative, again, this is not HIPAA protected data, the administrative data out of the current system so it could hook up to the Heroku app that they had made. And so what this is an argument for is, even if you don't think that the data you have is suitable to be released, increasing the liquidity of that data, and by liquidity what I mean is interoperability and your ability to share that data, will open up a huge realm of possibilities, the same way it did here when it had 4 people working full-time for 9 months to do it. It opens the realm of possibility you have when speaking with your colleagues, when speaking across departments, if you're confident that you can effectively share that data. So obviously, open data is something I'm very passionate about, an end goal. Obviously, it's very sensitive, but starting that march today couldn't be more important. So this is all to say that our mission, as I said, to build a government that's for the people, by the people, that works in the 21st century, is really coming against one core problem, which is that you see innovation in society on an incredible curve. And in government, not only is it not on that incredible curve, it's never going to catch up. And this is represented by the red line and the blue line. So we fundamentally need to rethink our approach to government. And again, when you think about healthcare.gov, it shows that this isn't a problem that it was a bad decision made from a IT lead in a city or a state. When the president of the United States is having technical difficulties with his signature initiative, I think it's indicative of the fact that our relationship with technology might be a little complicated. And so we have a few different avenues to hopefully bring these two curves into sync. And I think that when we talk about the Amelia example, for her, we fix that curve. So we have a few ways of doing this. Here are some of our fellows, albeit in the middle of an open house party we were having, so give them some slack. They're very serious people. One of them is here today, Dave Guarino. And these are developers, designers, data scientists that we recruit often from the private sector, but they come from amazing walks of life. You guys will probably anticipate from the people you see here that this is a lot of millennials. These are people out of college. And it was in our first year of running the fellowship. But more and more, it's actually become a mid-career professional development program. And because people who are working in the industry want a chance to do something new, want a chance to do something different. And so when you guys are thinking about the immense amount of effort it is to open up this data, I want you to think about the fact that there are tons of people. We've had about 900 people on average apply every year for this fellowship for 30 spots. We have a lower acceptance rate than Harvard. It is because there's a huge hunger for technologists to work on things that matter. There's this really great quote by this guy named Jeff Hammerbacher who says that the greatest minds of our generation are getting people to click on ad space. And again, that's a little bit self-referential for the tech industry. I don't buy into that. But that's to say that people are really working for an avenue to work on cool things. And so that's what we see in the fellowship. And again, as I said, they embed in about an average of 10 cities a year, doing similar projects to what I described to you in San Francisco, but across a gamut of policy issues. But there was so much interest in this program, that we started a brigade, and this is what Andy was referring to. And so the difference of the fellowship is that these fellows leave, wherever they're embedded in. Brigades stay. And brigades start to form a constituency in their cities, pushing for openness, building on top of open data in their cities, and essentially advocating for, advising the city on their IT strategy. And frankly, I live in Oakland, and every Tuesday, there are people meeting for the Open Oakland Brigade to talk about government IT. Some people are surprised to hear that. And that happens in 36 other cities in the country. So you guys are so lucky in Sacramento to also have one. Haley Pate is the Code for America Brigade captain here, and she leads Code for SAC. So this is very real. And one example I'll show you is, this is the Get a Flu Shot app that Chicago Department of Health has. And what's really cool about this, last year, around January, Harlan Weber, basically Boston was hit with a flu epidemic. Or I guess I should be really careful the way I use epidemic here. A rise in flu cases. And what he did was he had been on brigade hangouts with our brigade captains in Chicago, and he said, how do we get that flu shot app over here? And then within 48 hours, he had hooked up with Tom Campari that had built the Get a Flu Shot app, and they had redeployed that application off of data provided by the city in Boston. Now that's kind of special, right? Is that you have something that the source code that someone coded in Chicago as part of an OpenGov hack night now moves within days to get to be used in another place because there's a real need. So that's a fantastic example. So here you have our fellowship, which is our service model. You have the brigade, which is our grassroots model. And then the one I passed over really quickly was we also have an accelerator, because, where fellows, their fellowship ends, and whereas brigades are doing this in their part-time job, we also need some people who are, doing this full-time. We need people who are building new tools for government, not in their spare time. And so that's why we started the accelerator. And the accelerator serves a few different purposes. We invest in startups that want to work with government. We give them a little bit of seed funding, but more so is we give them an orientation to the pain points in government. And so this slide is just staggering to me. The app market, all this activity around iOS apps is $2 billion. The video game market is $10 billion. Think about the state and local government IT spend, that's $60 billion. And so wherever I go to any of these, like hotshot co-working spaces and talking to these techies, it's like, you guys got to get into government because there is so much money there, right? The pitch gets a little different when talking to entrepreneurs. But there still is a huge opportunity for them to be providing these services. So again, now we are tapping the market too. Finally, this is the program that I have been spending most of my time on lately, is our peer network. And this is essentially, it's this book basically all the time, which is that people thrive off of examples. People thrive off of stories of small successes. And, because small successes turn into big successes. And so we have started the peer network as a way to kind of bring together all the crazy ones in all these different cities. And because, working at trying to force innovation in a government bureaucracy is sometimes a little bit lonely, right? And so now we have connected 100 of these people. Now we're actually, this is part of our pilot this year that we were running. Now we're opening this up to any government official to basically be connected with trainings around a lot of these open data ideas, around design, around lean, as well as collaboration opportunities, which I'll get to in a second. So the second story I want to tell you actually does get us a little bit closer to data and isn't just about good design. And that is the work that we did in San Mateo this year. And so they had the charge of how do you end hunger in San Mateo? Again, small problem for them to solve. And what they realized very quickly was that, and they called themselves Bites to Bites, which is cute. And what they realized very quickly was that good service delivery starts with good service discovery. And so that's why they started with this woman, again, this isn't now a composite, this is a real person, her name Jackie. And Jackie makes about $41,000 a year. And in San Mateo, they've realized that the cost of living is about $87,000 per year if you're a mom with 2 kids. Now, CalFresh only works up to $25K. So there's obviously a gap. Jackie is living in the gap. So who helps people that live in the gap? It really is 590 plus community service organizations that help people in places that they need. And again, this has become a fundamental way of the government works. We contract out for nonprofits and social service providers to provide those services. And the way that they were finding them was a yearly updated community service directory in print. So essentially, the second this thing is printed, it goes out of date, which is particularly hard for this person, again, when you think about Jackie, who's just trying to find these services. And also, it's incomplete. And also, it's only in 2 languages, which is incredibly tough when you have a huge populations representing 6 languages in San Mateo County. And so what they did, and again, this is kind of just the before and after, we're going to get a little bit into how open data fueled this, is they started with this notion of what do you need? And Ohana is essentially a way to find different services that are up to date. So this never goes out of date. And here you can see on the upper right-hand corner that it's in English, Spanish, Tagalog, Arabic, Chinese, Russian. And so it's meeting people where they are and the way they need it. Now, and you can see, here we go. And also, so food, and you get a full list here of contact information, the name, the eligibility, and it's also available on your smartphone. And so what's interesting is that they got a lot of this, they opened up a lot of this data from the Peninsula Library System, which essentially plays the role of your average 2-on-1 provider. And again, for those of you who are a little less acquainted with it, 2-on-1 is essentially information referral. It brings together keeping an up-to-date directory of services, and that information, oftentimes they have to call every community service provider in order to keep that up-to-date information, and also referral, which is then disseminating that information effectively to the intermediary, the social working intermediaries that need it, other service providers, as well as the end user client themselves. Now, doesn't that sound like a lot of work for one organization to do? It does to me. So the way they did this was they got a lot of the data from the Peninsula Library System. And again, as you can see, the status quo in San Mateo, as well as in the vast majority of places across the country, is that you have governments doing what they do, nonprofits doing what they do, community doing what they do, and the data about all those services is being held by this one single organization. And again, these guys are not the bad guys. They are doing the most important work of updating the service directory. They created a thing called the Ohana API, the Application Programming Interface, which is just really a easy way to read and write and access the same database from anywhere that's connected to the web, essentially. That's a very simple reading of it. And that means that government, nonprofits, and community can all write to the Ohana API, which means that anyone in the social service organization can simply go in an interface and update their information whenever they want. So can government, so can the community. Anyone can pull out that information. So they built a reference implementation, which is SMC Connect, which I was showing you before, and it's updating SMC Connect in real time. So again, the Peninsula Library System opened up their data in this API. The fellows helped them open up in this API format, and then they built one app on top of it, which ended up satisfying a bit of the need of the project. Now, this is 2 weeks before the end of their fellowship this year. We use GitHub for all of our coding, which is essentially a social coding site. It's free if you're working open source, which is good for us because we always work open source. And a guy who is working at a health policy group in DC issued a pull request. A pull request is when you want to add something to the existing code base or repo. And what he did was he basically had himself built the SMS version of SMC Connect, of serving up that data. And so basically, 2 weeks before the end of the fellowship, they got a whole fellowship's worth of work done for them because the API had made that possible, because the API is now updating the SMS interface for this. Now, just to think that there's someone who wanted to spend his time, and again, there are hers too, doing this is incredible. And it also speaks to just a completely different economy when you think about how far this data can travel. So we're here to help us spread the word about this because we want to see a similar API being used by other United Way organizations across the country. We've already been convening a conversation for the past few months that includes a wide range of stakeholders. If you want to be one, you should let us know. But also, you should talk to Greg Bloom, who is sitting right here, who has been our chief wrangler / cat herder on thinking through what this standard needs to be in order to kind of satisfy a lot of the stakeholders at work here and get a good deal of adoption. The one last thing I want to mention about Ohana and the way it relates to service providers is it means that one reason why it's so hard to get service providers to update their information is because 10, 12, 20 different requests come in every year for that information. So they just learn to ignore them. What we do with this is we let there be a one-stop shop. You do it once and it can travel to everywhere it needs to go, which is really exciting. So this is the last thing I'll talk about today, just to talk about, again, show this, and this is particularly showing how open data can really travel widely, how the solutions you create off of open data can scale very widely and have a huge amount of impact. And this addresses, this notion of, okay, I'm going to open this data, and then what is going to happen to it? Am I just going to put it up on this website and it's just going to sit there? And I just did all of this work just so it can sit there because my boss told me to do it. Now, we've seen over the past 5 years an explosion in the amount of data that's being opened at the local, state, and federal level. And so this is cities.data.gov. And again, this is really positive. This is great that the data is out there. But yes, it is just sitting there. No one knows what's in there. No one knows where to look for it. For instance, the Chicago, let's see, one up here, Overseas Loans and Grants Green Book. Again, if you're a researcher, you know how to find this stuff. But I think we made very clear so far that open data, it only goes beyond transparency when it meets people where they are. So that's exactly what we did. The first example here is, for instance, I use the BART to get to work from Oakland to San Francisco every day. Every day I check Google Maps to tell me when the next train is leaving. And what if I told you that is in fact there because of open data? This woman named Bibiana McHugh is working in Portland TriMet circa 2000 and is thinking, I have this crappy little transit schedule to let people know about when my trains are leaving. That's it. And I'm seeing people walk around more and more with these smartphones. How do I get this schedule into these smartphones? So I'm going to abbreviate the story very, very, very short. But she called Google, and as a result of a very long process, they created the General Transit Feed Specification. It took about 5 years to get 50 transit agencies publishing their data in it. Now there's 697 transit agencies publishing their data in the General Transit Feed Specification. And as a result, that data gets pumped in to Google Maps. As a result, that means that people who need to know exactly when the train is leaving know, but also it captures choice riders who before were choosing between driving or walking or taking the train. They now can, and again, I think I'm kind of in this category of A-type person who wants to know exactly when the train is leaving. It lets them get back into the public process. So that's one really great example. It's used every day by millions of people that don't even know it's being built off of an open data standard. The second one, which you guys might have heard about, is a open data standard we made for restaurant inspections. And so we worked on this standard with New York City and San Francisco. And now today, if you go, next time you go to dinner in San Francisco, or hopefully soon in Sacramento, is you can now see the official restaurant inspection score, and then you can click on it and get the full violation history, right? And so it was funny because this was actually the thing after working at Code for America for something like 3 years, my friends were kind of like, oh my God, look at I can see the violation history. Like, did you have anything to do with this? Like, is this what you do? And I'm like, yes, I've been talking about this for 3 years. So this is a very highly visible thing that we're really excited about. The last one I'll show you here is residential building inspection data being integrated into Trulia. And this is something that actually a number of cities currently have up online, but it's on a website that no one visits. And so what we've done now is Trulia gets 30 million unique visitors a month. And now what you can see, again, similarly, is a full health and safety history of every home, every apartment, every house in a jurisdiction that's sharing this data. And the goal here is think about having that information at your fingertips before you sign a lease, before you change deed on a house. And I'm not saying it would make you choose yay or nay, it might, but it influences the conversation you're having, and government played a huge role in giving you the information you needed. So we're working on a few of these. So Lives, House Facts is a residential building inspection one. The flu shot immunizations one is now a standard itself, so it can access the flu shot finder that Tom Campari built. Working on one around trails data. And finally, as I said, open referral, which is the project that Greg is leading us on. And so before I close out here, again, on the standards piece, it means that as we create more standards, and what you'll notice about this, it's not just a technical standard. This is a cross-sector collaboration with large integrators, right? We're bringing Google to the table. We're bringing Yelp to the table. We're bringing Trulia to the table. And I'm not just trying to feed them, but what it does is it is enough of a lever to get the data out of the cities and the governments themselves. And now anyone can use any of that data and build things that we haven't even imagined yet. And again, that's tapping into the economy we were talking about. We were talking about that SMS app built on Ohana. So finally, I guess in summary, I would say 3 things. One is people, not data, and keep on considering that. Where is your data going to be relevant? And you guys have all heard the saying, you don't know what you don't know. And I'll say you don't know who you don't know. You don't know about the guy that is ready to build an entire SMS app on top of the data that you're going to release. You don't know where it could totally solve an intractable problem for someone else that you've never met before. So consider that. And finally, of course, standards matter. Standards matter not only to make sure that the data you're putting out is machine readable, standards make sure that everyone is putting out data points that make that data useful. And so finally, to close, I just want to say that this is not an easy process, but there is an army of people, not an army, let's say a family. Let's say a family of people who want to use this data and are really interested in seeing what you guys can put out there. And if you ever need a friend, you should join the peer network because we've got a lot of them there for you. Thank you very much.